Hey guys, my name is Rai. Today I wanted to go through my plus 20 Darkflame Cleft on my preservation evoker, show you some hints, some tricks, and how to be a better preservation player, and some of the decisions I made when tackling this key. First off, I want to show you guys something really quick in my talents that I did swap out. So for now, with the massive buffs to Chronoflame, I am running Enkindled, which is going to give us 3% more damage and healing for Leading Flame. And for this key specifically, I did swap 1 point out of here instead of running 2 and going into Regenerative Magic. This does give me 2% leech. And as for, if you remember on Preservation Evoker, when you are full health, your mastery is always going to kick in. Lifebind makes it so that you're basically leeching a ton of healing anyway and healing yourself, so this is a very important node and ends up being worth about over a 1% healing increase. So I did min-max this a little bit, I did drop Spatial Paradox, and I will be showing you in this keystone what I did to handle these healing checks. In this route, this is a little different than what you might have seen in my last video, and I want to walk you through how I approach some of these checks, my thought process, and how you should be approaching higher keys on preservation. Whenever I go into the first pull of this dungeon, I consider that I need a couple things. I'm going to need my pre-tip to scales, I'm going to need stasis, I'm going to need Zephyr, Emerald Communion, Renewing Blaze, and scales, and you're going to need it all. When fighting packs like this, you should be ready to go in and pop everything when you're hitting Bloodlust. One feedback point I give a lot of healers now is that, when their DPS are going into pulls, your prerogative should be to keep them topped and pre-healing. I see a lot of preservation evokers reactive healing, but I'm going to show you some tricks in what I do when preparing for this pull and some of the more difficult encounters in this dungeon. I want to use this too as a template where you can get a little bit better and maybe increase your skills as a healer, specifically on preservation, and as you're getting ready for the next patch. As I go into this pull, you're going to see that I put a bunch of echoes out and I'm pre-healing with that tip to scales and stasis. I'm going to be using that obsidian scales early, dispelling where I can, and hitting Zephyr early if I need to. You'll see here that I immediately go into that Lifebind, I hit that stasis tip to scales even before the damage lands, meaning that as soon as that damage goes out, my Spirit Bloom and Lifebind is going to be healing up my party. Pay really close attention here to how much time and effort I put into making sure that all my party members are healed up constantly before any damage event. I'm making sure that I'm keeping everybody topped at all times because I don't know when exactly any of my team's going to take any ticks of damage from bolts, from this very deadly debuff, which hits for about 30% of my health every second, and as well these throw rocks from these mole herds. I think when approaching these kinds of packs in Mythic Plus, you always want to make sure that you always have that Dream Breath out, those echoes out with reversions, and as well getting ready to Lifebind any big periodic AoE effect such as the Overseer. In this route now, we are taking what we call the MDI route. We are not going to be playing 2 more Overseers, but we're going to be grabbing all these mole herds and pulling them around the corner and then going into boss when they're dead. Watch carefully here as I prepare to go in this pull, but I need a lot of things ready. When thinking about pulls like this in Mythic Plus, I need to make sure that I have enough healing for myself and that my team is being pre-healed. I know that when we're fighting 3 Wicklighters, it does mean there's going to be 3 magic debuffs going out and I'm only going to be able to dispel 1. I'm always keeping out Echo Reversion on my party, keeping that Fire Breath out when I can, and I'm going to start pre-healing for my next ramp. Again, anytime you see my team start to drip low, I'm already pressing something in preparation of the next damage event. On packs like this, I actually never know who's going to be taking a lot of damage, and I have to be very, very careful about who I choose to dispel, who I choose to heal, but one thing that I can always do is be pre-planning for this damage pattern. Again, if I have Renewing Blaze out or Obsidian Scales, if I have Echoes out on my party, if I'm, pre-ramping with Lifebind, I can reactively do things at all times to keep my team topped. You'll see that this is no easy pull as I'm sustaining 2 million HPS on just a trash pack in this dungeon. But the problem is this is all unexpected healing. This isn't healing that you can really plan for. I don't know who it's going to be on, so I want to make sure that at all times I have healing ready to go. This is including spending that Echo on cooldown, using those Life Spark procs to generate Essence Burst, which is going to give me free Echoes, which cost no resource, and as well Life Binding whenever I get that Verdant Embrace back up. So see here, immediately again, I'm just using those Life Sparks. I am absolutely using Dispel on cooldown, and I'm using things like Time Dilation, Rewind, etc. to get my team topped. Old Waxbeard is absolutely no joke, and you're going to deal with a pretty nasty fixate on this encounter. When dealing with encounters like this, I like to think of different ways in which I can prepare my team to deal with oncoming damage. I use Tip the Scales on pull just for that damage effect from that Threads of Fates, and I start getting all my pre-healing out. As you can see, my Death Knight had instantly 40 stacks of the debuff, so I choose to cauterize him. My game and action plan on this encounter is always make sure I alternate cauterize and time dilation on my team to make sure that they have enough healing support to handle through the dot. Old Waxbeard does do this fixate periodically throughout the encounter, which is that luring candle flame, which will make all the adds in the room fixate on him. Your job as a healer is to always make sure that you have pre-healing out and making sure that you have resources available to help your team. Again here, my mage gets it, and what do? I actually immediately start ramping a stasis on him. Knowing that now, I can release that stasis within the next 25 seconds to heal any sort of damage that encounters on my team. All I'm really caring about is constantly having healing out for my team, and I think one of the biggest pitfalls of preservation is if you don't do this, you're going to fall behind. But it's actually really easy. It's just a different way of thinking about healing when compared to other healers. You just always have to have something available and rolling, and anytime I know a damage event is coming within the next 10 seconds, I use that same combo, which is Echo, 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 and then I have a choice node. I can either choose to use that Verdant Embrace into that Lifebind Spirit Bloom, or I can just go ahead and put out some reversions on my team for that Grace Period effect. Again, you'll notice I time dilated my Druid here, which is because I wanted to stick to my plan of alternating time dilation and as well cauterize. For every luring flame, you can either use one of these two things, and if the luring flame happens quicker than having either of these buttons off cooldown, I can fill with using something like Rescue, Emerald Communion, or using a bigger cooldown like, that Tip the Scales, Spirit Bloom, or releasing a Stasis. I do end up dying on this encounter to a really stupid card death, and I still don't think I should have actually died, but you're going to see here what ends up happening. Otherwise, I'm sticking to my plan, and as soon as the fixate is on me, I'm using that Renewing Blaze and that Obsidian Scales. Again, when thinking about preservation, as I kind of get whacked there by a cart, which I don't think should have actually hit me, but it did, you want to make sure that you have this pre-healing combo out at all times. Make sure that you're preemptively healing up your party before damage events do happen, and don't take the time to do it afterwards. If you are deciding to play Preservation next patch and you would like to increase your Mythic Plus skill, you need to understand that having reversions out at all time and always be casting is very, very, very important. Keep those echoes out, keep those reversions out, and then when damage events start to happen, as you learn the patterns, start practicing those Lifebind windows. One trick that I always tell newer players on Preservation to do is keep those echoes out and then immediately use that Tip the Scales Stasis combo, which is going to help you sync up your Stasis and Tip the Scales really quickly. You'll see that on the Scandal pull, I'm following that same pattern, which is Echo, 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 Verdant Embrace, Stasis, Tip the Scales, then Spirit Bloom, and then putting a TA and as well that Dream Breath inside my Stasis. You can see here how cozy my team is throughout this entire pull, as for every single one of these Wandering Candle AoEs, I do keep out those reversions, I have those echoes, and I'm lifebinding my team to full. Notice here how long I held on to my Stasis for. This was actually a little bit of a misplay, as what I should have done is noticing the timer, I should have released it on the last go, but this does help me top up my team and keep an additional Dream Breath rolling on my entire team for the next set of Candle AoEs. As you'll see here, I go in, I echo, 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 Life Spark, and as well now, I'm going in my next AoE as my Druid hits Bear Form, I Spirit Bloom, and as well here, I can use any one of my healing CDs I need to top up my team. This cadence is very important for handling what I call massive rot healing over a short period of time, or, periodic healing. As I lifebind my team up here, I'm constantly healing them to full with those combos that I talk about in all my videos, which is that Echo, 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 Verdant Embrace, Spirit Bloom. Even for Preservation, I find these Wandering Candle packs to be very easy and very easy to catch up on, and I've never really had a problem with them. But it is something that I do find some players struggle with, as using that combo can be a little bit daunting. There is a lot of setup time in Preservation Evoker as you're setting up for some of these keys, and you need to think about the future. What do I need in the next 20 seconds? What do I need to prep right now? And how can I maximize my buttons to prolong over a period of time? One tip that I like to give players as well is that you want to be using Dream Breath early in your Stasis, and then releasing it before you ever hit Dream Breath again. Using this pattern, so Stasis, Tip the Scales, Spirit Bloom, TA, Dream Breath, and then as well, when that first Dream Breath ends, you can release your Stasis again, And then as well, when that Dream Breath ends, you can, Dream Breath again, and you can have upwards of 45 seconds, if not with double time, 55 seconds of Dream Breath rolling in your party. And this is a massive amount of healing, which over some of these encounters, if you're able to see my breakdown in this poem, which I will link a log in the description, you're going to see that it's almost like 20% of my healing in some of these chaotic kind of rot pools. So as we go into this candle pack, again, I'm putting a Dream Breath out to heal a little bit of the candle AoE, but there's no kind of importance here for me to get my team topped up quick. I can take my time as long as I need to get my team topped up from this Wandering Candle, as we're going to be orchestrating a stop order on making sure these Blazing Fiends don't go out. In your pugs, or maybe in a group where you miss a Blazing Fiend stop, it's actually not a bad idea if you're playing with a new team to ramp a stasis here. What I would recommend too is if there's any stops going out, or that Wandering Candle AoE does coincide with the Blazing Fiends exploding, you could lose somebody, or somebody could drop dangerously low. It's never a bad idea to use that stasis with Tip the Scales and pre-heal. What I mean is, if you're unsure of a damage event, there's absolutely no reason why you can go Echo, 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 Bird Embrace, Stasis, Tip the Scales, TA, Dream Breath, after your Spirit Bloom, and just have healing ready to go in case your team drops low. Obviously, in my circumstance, I trust all of the players that I'm currently playing with, as we've all played together quite a bit over the past little while. So I know that whatever I do in my decision making, I can make sure that I trust them in sticking to plan. On the Blazikon encounter, there isn't really much to do in terms of me healing. I can kind of choose whatever pattern I want to be able to heal up my team from the candle AoE. On Preservation, you will notice that I do clear either 1, 2, or 3 candles, depending on the need of my team, and I constantly have those echoes out to be able to handle with any of the extinguishes. As we go over to this marker, I am going to be stacking here on X for the rest of the encounter. And again, anytime this extinguish goes out, I go Echo, 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 Bird Embrace, and then I swap up and either do a Dream Breath to go with that Lifebind, I Tip the Scale Spirit Bloom, or use something like Emerald Communion. Remember here, one really important thing is that in the build that I recommend and that I play in Mythic Plus, I do use Emerald Vitality. In the Preservation class tree, you do have a choice node option, which is called Emerald Vitality or Rush of Vitality. Choosing between these two talents is going to give you the option of being able to move while channeling Emerald Communion, or getting a 20% maximum health increase for the duration of Emerald Communion and a short period of time after. This is a 15-second increase in your maximum health, which is pretty massive in the grand scheme of things. Why I choose this talent is because if you are smart with it, you can always also hover before hitting your Emerald Communion. Meaning that if I use this combination, Echo, 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 hover, Bird Embrace, and then Emerald Communion, I can actually still channel Emerald Communion while moving, making that, in my mind, a complete dead talent. Why I don't always recommend, Emerald Vitality to newer players is that sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to get that Emerald Communion set up. And what if you mess it up or you forget, right? I think it's completely, a choice or an option sometimes to just take the Emerald Communion while moving, because sometimes if you're in a pinch, don't have that charge of hover, or you're stuck in a conundrum where you need to use Emerald Communion to move right away, you can get stuck and have to cancel it if you don't have the ability to move while doing it. However, in higher keys, and if you're looking to get better at Preservation, I think that if you're going to be taking a talent that amplifies Emerald Communion, you should always be taking the one that gives you that 20% health increase. Not only is it a massive HPS increase for when you press your Emerald Communion, as your Emerald Communion does scale off of the total health you have over the 4-second cast, that 20% health could be the difference between you living and dying certain mechanics. So on that last Blazikon AoE, not only did I just press Emerald Communion and live, I was able to do more healing and share it out to my party over the encounter. On a fight like Candle King, which is an exceptionally high HPS check, there's absolutely no reason for me not to use that talent, as it's just going to give me more HPS. As I'm finished up Blazikon, I'm going to follow the exact same practice and procedure, which I do and talk about in a lot of my videos, is saving that stasis and Tip the Scales for that Candle King, as I'm going to want it on the opener. I think one really important note that I would consider when you're thinking about going into an encounter Mythic Plus that might have a high healing check is, even if you think you've done the encounter before on a key level down and you're ready with all your buttons, make sure that you don't spend towards the end of an encounter. Never ever ever use your stasis before or at the very end of a boss fight, unless you really need it. I think I see a lot of footage of evokers just slamming stasis on cooldown, and I think although that could be a good use, I still would really recommend just pairing it with Tip the Scales as you're kind of learning or getting better, or if you're really looking to min-max. Starting any healing encounter on a fight with parry and stasis and Tip the Scales is going to give you a lot of firepower right off the gate, and especially too when playing chronowarden, you are going to get that 30% haste with Tip the Scales Temporal Burst. Temporal Burst is an amazing CD, and it makes it so that when you feel like you're ramping your stasis, you're not behind. I think the thing that is misunderstood about stasis is when you press it, you actually don't have the firepower until you release it. So it is a cooldown which involves you, taking some time to get it ready, and then releasing it is where its power is. However, if you pair it with Tip the Scales, you're always going to have power when you press it as well, so it's going to feel like you have power during that stasis ramp and afterwards when your temporal burst is over during the stasis release. Now, my DK did fail the skip here, and we are going to be going into this encounter with a player with a little bit of missing health, but that's okay. I'm going to hit him with one living flame to top him. I'm going to be using Temporal Anomaly to get my golden hours out from my reversion. And what's really important about this is to look and pay careful attention throughout this encounter to who I'm putting my reversions on. Remember that with Preservation, you are dealing with a talent called Grace Period, which is also going to be played in the next patch. Your healing is increased for 10% for targets on with Reversion. If you have 2 reversions on a target, they are going to be taking 20.5% increased healing. So off the gate, this doesn't really matter too much, as all I really care about is the reversions out for Life Spark procs, but as well, I'm immediately starting the encounter with that Echo, Stasis, Tip the Scale Spirit Bloom, TA, and Dream Breath. I am also running in this encounter Double Time, which when Dream Breath or Fire Breath critically strike, this is extended by 2 seconds up to a maximum of 12. Meaning that I can extend my Dream Breath for a very long time and hold on to that stasis for almost ever until expiration, so I never have to worry about my team kind of dropping low. I can release my stasis as late as I want and make sure that my team is still more than fine. See here how I very strategically put 2 reversions on my druid, so he now has 20% increased healing on him. This is a massive important benefit for this encounter, as I'm going to be wanting to heal my squishiest players first. I do let my team drop a little bit low here before I release that stasis. I Echo, I Burn Embrace, I Life Spark to get myself full, and I Spirit Bloom to top up my druid. At the start of every single cycle, I am running that Temporal Anomaly to get those reversions back out. Although it's very mana intensive, it is a very big throughput increase, and I want to make sure that I'm very carefully organizing this to make sure I can get ahead. I do hit rewind early here, as I actually struggled a little bit and hit a wrong button trying to top my team. But this is a little bit of a lull. And why you can see that this is important here is I need to get to my next stasis. And with that in mind, I'm going to have to hold on to that next stasis so I get 2 Dream Breath uses. Here, I get some Echoes out, I go into Lifebind, and my team is topped from that Spirit Bloom. I TA, I Dream Breath, and now my team is pretty much topped. But now I need to buy 10 seconds till I get to that next stasis, so I do decide to Lifebind into Emerald Communion. Remember now, I don't have to hit a charge of Obsidian Scales because I have a 20% health increase. I am using that Spirit Bloom, but you can see that immediately I'm not using my stasis here yet. The reason why is I want my Dream Breath to be back off cooldown before I use it, so I can put my Spirit Bloom and my Dream Breath within my stasis. I am holding about 4 million HPS right now, and this is no easy feat, as again for this dungeon, I actually tried dropping almost all my mastery gear. Dropping all my mastery gear means that my throughput is a lot lower as I'm running a lot more crit, but my uptime from reversion and double time is going to be a lot higher, as well as my personal damage. Now that I have stasis ramped, I'm going to be immortal for the next 45 seconds. I can roll Dream Breath 3 times, and I have infinite healing, which I can continue to top my party on. As you can see, I'm not releasing that stasis at all, and my team is just very healthy. It's very easy for me to get caught up here, as I can keep following that pattern of Echo, Burn Embrace, tip the scales if I need to, release my stasis, or use that life spark proc. See how very carefully now I released my stasis and I have Dream Breath just rolling in my party. My team is very, very cozy as I go into my next tip the scales, which means for the next 30 seconds, I'm in temporal burst, meaning I have a ton of haste. At this point, I'm just going to be alternating things like my Renewing Blaze, my Obsidian Scales, and using those big healing cooldowns to get through the encounter. I did call for Mass Barrier here, as this is a little bit of my weak part of the fight. As you can see, in 23 seconds, I'm going to get stasis back. If I really did need, I still have my mana pot available, and I do have Innervate coming up, but I'm more than okay. I'm still holding about 4 million HPS, and I think that, I'm pretty cozy at this point as I call for AMZ. All I have to do here is top my team up with a little bit of that rot healing, use that TA, and get my team topped before this candle breaks. Echo, 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 Avert Embrace, Dream Breath to get a little bit of passive healing out, and I hit Zephyr. At this point, again, I have stasis coming up in 2 seconds if I really need to, and I have Innervate. If I wanted to keep healing this, because I would be in my next stasis at this point, I could have healed this for a while. I think I was actually really, really cozy, and it gives me full confidence that I could probably get through 21 with a little bit of planning. This was my second attempt on 20 Candle King. I did have an attempt 2 weeks back where we really messed up and didn't clear candles, and I missed the healing check because there was extra candles alive, but for all intents and purposes, pretty happy with how this ended up, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of understanding of how I made my decisions in tackling this encounter. More importantly too, as I pause, I did want to iterate too that this is not just a template for Candle King. I think that this is a good template for handling any healing requirement. So step 1, open with Tip the Scales and Stasis if you have a rot encounter. Think about fights like Priory, encounters in Priory where you have constant rot damage on those paladins. You can pretty much heal them forever if you're smart about using that Echo, 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 for an Embrace, Stasis, Tip the Scale, Spirit Bloom, TA, then Dream Breath. I think if you alternate these things and you keep really high uptime on Dream Breath, track things like Double Time, track things like Call of Ysara, you're going to have a really good time and a really easy time when dealing with some of these encounters. At the end of this dungeon, my tank is going to be pulling the entire hallway and I'm going to be babysitting him through it. If you've watched any of the videos on my channel, I do this pull as well on my Demon Hunter. However, this is the perspective now from a healer. What am I doing? What am I paying attention to? And why is it important that I'm babysitting my tank? From a strategy perspective, my tank is going to be tagging every single mob in this area and we're going to be pulling them all to the end in one go. This is a huge time save as it allows the cart to move freely on its own and my team is just going to be getting kicks on the shuffling horrors in the back. The only job that I have is making sure that my tank has distance and dispels on these mobs on him. If I need to, I can landslide, I can time dilate, I can dispel, or I can rescue him. But most importantly, all I'm really doing is babysitting him and making sure that if I need to dispel him, I can. You're going to see here that I rescue him when I need. I'm dispelling him, keeping a little bit of healing on him with Echo Reversion, and just topping him up when he needs. My job as a healer here is only to enable my tank on the gather. I don't have any responsibility or healing requirement, and now for this last pull, I can use Tip the Scales offensively as I'm going to be pairing it with Stasis to get those Threads of Fate active. In a patch 11.2, we're going to be using Threads of Fate a bunch to maximize our group's damage, which I talk about in my preservation video about my thoughts on the next tier. So you're going to see here that immediately I go Stasis, I keep some Echoes out, I burn Embrace, Stasis, Tip the Scales, Spirit Bloom, TA, Dream Breath, bam. I have my Fire Breath out, which is giving me tons of passive healing from my Life Giver's Flame. And as well, I'm just making sure I dispel my tank on cooldown. We did have a death here to threat, which was kind of unfortunate. And throughout this entire dungeon, I don't think we had a single healer death or death oriented, something that could have prevented. This first death in the dungeon was me weirdly getting hit by a cart. I probably deserve it, but it did kind of suck. The second one was our Death Knight missing the jump and pulling the mini boss. And our last 2 deaths in the dungeon are one due to threats and one due to a one-shot. So as this pack kind of dies, you can see that, again, I'm just hitting that dispel on cooldown on my tank, but at the same time, I'm making sure I keep all healing available on him. I don't miss a beat and make sure that constantly he has those 2 charges of reversion. Remember too that because of grace period, for every charge of reversion he has on him, he's going to be taking 20.5% increased healing from me. I did get a question asked the other day, Rye, why is it 20.5 and not 20%? There's 2 charges of them. The reason why is it is multiplicative. So when you are getting 2 charges of reversion, you're getting 10% on the additional 10%. So you're taking 20.5 additional healing, which amounts out to about. In this last part of the dungeon, there's nothing too much, but I'm going to show you, and I think really similar to how I did my 18 a couple months ago, or 17. I'm going to show you exactly the healing pattern that I took to get through this last boss. I think this last boss is amazing on Prez, but there are a couple loopholes which you have to be cognizant of. I think when I think about encounters like this that deal with one-shots, you have to be very smart and creative with your use of Obsidian Scales, Emerald Communion, and Time Dilation. Remember, on Preservation, you have 4 defensive abilities that are going to reduce the damage taken as well as hover. So if I really needed to, I'm kind of immortal on this class. Every time I press hover, I get a 20% damage reduction for 3 seconds, diminishing over time. I have Time Dilation on a 1-minute cooldown, which is going to reduce the damage I take by 50% and redistribute it over 10 seconds. And as well, I have 2 charges of Obsidian Scales at a 30% damage reduction, and lastly, Emerald Communion, which is a 20% damage, health increase, which is about the same as having a 20% damage reduction. It's maths a little bit differently, but we'll call it that for argument's sake. Lastly, I do have Zephyr to reduce the damage done of my team, or taken by my team by AoE effects by 20%. And I have Rescue, which is a 30% health shield on myself and one ally. Meaning that on Preservation, I have tons of tools to be able to get out of mechanics in a pinch. Going back to Dragonflight Season 3, where I played this spec quite a bit, I basically felt immortal back then, having so many tools, but now I have even more. Being enabled with a 20% hover is insane and does give me a lot of wiggle room to be able to get through some of the more difficult mechanics. My Druid there did die because he didn't press Spark Skin, because no Disc Priest or Holy Paladin, so that was a little bit unfortunate, but that is the time where we figured that, hey, we might need to recalibrate here a little bit. Let's take some time and think about, if I'm getting hit by this AoE, what am I going to do? Anyway, in the first AoE, I do go into that Stasis, Tip the Scales, TA, and Spirit Bloom, and my team is instantly topped. Watch carefully here what I do when I get this debuff, and how I acclimated to it when I realized I'm going to die. I do hit Time Dilation on myself coming up here in 1 second, and I hit TD, and watch how low I actually dropped. After this, I did realize that I'm going to need a lot more than just Time Dilation to stay alive. So going in the future, I'm going to need something like Hover, I'm going to need Emerald Communion, or I'm going to need a Zephyr for myself as a personal. This does mean as well too, I can Zephyr for my team, I can rescue them, or I can Time Dilate them if I need. However, I need to be very cautious about making sure I don't get one shot to the darkness. This did get me thinking as well when I encountered this on plus 21, what I'm going to have to do. Again, I get targeted here, I hit Obsidian Scales, and I hover, and I'm more than okay. On 21, that's not going to be enough, and I'm going to have to come up with a better action plan. What I'm probably going to be doing on 21 is using Obsidian Scales, Hover, and Rescue to survive the darkness if I don't have Time Dilation. There is a world too where I might have to save TD for my team if they don't have any sort of button or external, or I might have to save Emerald Communion. On the second healing ramp of the fight, I always use Emerald Communion. The reason why particularly I do it on this encounter is on the first one, I use Stasis Tip the Scales. And because all of them are exactly 1 minute apart, 60 seconds, by the time the third darkness in the fight happens, which you're going to see here shortly, I exactly have my Tip the Scales back. Meaning that there's absolutely no reason why I shouldn't be pairing them together and releasing it as I need. If I really wanted to, I don't even think I need to use Stasis, as I think Echo, 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 Verdant Embrace, Tip the Scale, Spirit Bloom, with maybe a raid cooldown like Zephyr, like AMZ, like Mass Barrier, would be more than enough to carry the entire healing event. This could save me Stasis for something else, but I don't really need it on this encounter. I think Stasis is kind of useless on this encounter in general. There is a world where if the Candle King didn't exist, I could even drop Stasis in this key. I don't think it has that much power for a lot of these encounters, other than maybe the Candle Trash. But as you can see there, I Stasis, Tip the Scales, Spirit Bloom, and then I Dream Breath. Again, looking carefully at my buttons, I know I still have available a charge of obsidian scales. I do have time dilation. I do have rewind. If I were to get another fixate on me, my first response would be, well, let's look at my team. My druid has no bark skin, has no shadow meld, and if he's targeted, we know that he's not going to be able to live through bear. So I'm either going to need to rescue him or time dilate him. I think my DK can probably live just fine if he gets something. However, he has no meld, no IMS, and no icebound, so he's going to be in danger. And my mage has block and invis, so he'd be fine. So I'm a little bit cautious right now about what I have to do with this next time dilate. If I time dilate myself, there is a chance that if my druid or my DK get picked, they could be in danger. However, I'm waiting for this next shadow blast, it goes out and it's on me. Meaning that, okay, if it's on me now, this is pretty safe that I could just time dilate myself, I can hover, and I can top myself completely. As this encounter goes down, I am at the end of this story time in this video. Hopefully this video helped you understand not only how I approach this dungeon, but how I make some decision making when approaching this key. I think that this is a really good template for being able to handle a lot of keys on preservation, as it includes a lot of really interesting healing checks. This includes, a rot healing encounter on the Candle King. It includes, periodic rot healing like those candles that are seen after the first boss. And it deals with how to prepare for one-shots and heavy, quick healing rot checks in the last boss. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, feel free to let me know in the comments or come check out my Discord, where all my weak auras, my routes, and all my information is available for free. I appreciate all the love and support, and if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to see on this channel, again, feel free to come drop a line or check me out on Twitch, where I stream pretty regularly. Have a good afternoon, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.